and I'll say at the beginning, today is June 29th, 2016. This is Larry Morrissey, and I'm with Ashley Rogers, formerly Ashley Hewitt, and you are the youth.
I'm the children's ministry director.
Children's ministry here at Wells. We're in one of the children's ministry rooms here in the basement, and I'm here to talk with you for the Wells Oral History Project. When I started all the other interviews, I basically first want you to just give a little background about yourself, where you're born and where you grew up, and then maybe if you could talk, if you had a religious upbringing, what that was like, and what church you went to, or that kind of thing.
So I was born in New Orleans and lived in the New Orleans and Chalmette area until I was, like grade school age. And then we moved to the North Shore of Louisiana in Mandeville, Louisiana. And I grew up as a member of St. Timothy United Methodist Church. And over the years, it grew into a huge congregation. It's one of the biggest Methodist churches in Louisiana now. But my mom started working for the church when I was about 7 or 8. When I was 13, she formally went into the ministry and then was one of the pastors on staff there. They had about 7 pastors on staff, which is pretty unusual for a Methodist church. But so my whole life was I've always just been part of the Methodist church. And then moving into high school, I started doing things like sitting on the administrative council of the church and being the youth representative to things like that in our district and parish level Methodist organization. So I've always been fascinated and involved with like the workings of the church. So I'm kind of a Methodist nerd when it comes to things like, how does the church govern on a national level, on an international level? What do all the different, we love our acronyms in the Methodist church. So how things function. And so I've always just kind of had that background. When I was probably junior or senior in high school, I really felt called to go into ministry. And coming out of high school and going into college, I moved to Jackson originally because I was at Millsaps College. I wanted to go to a smaller liberal arts school. It was a huge bonus that it was a Methodist school. So I went there. When I was at Millsaps, I went through the Methodist candidacy process and pursued that line, still thinking I really wanted to go into ministry. But then as kind of we did more discernment and I really thought about what I wanted to do, I realized that I still wanted just to be a public school teacher and to work in the public realm, but then try to find ways to also be in service to a church just at a local level. So, went through college, started teaching here in Jackson at Green Elementary, and I've been there, and this is going into my 9th year maybe, that I've been there. And then along the way kind of found Wells, and it just so happened that kind of when I started coming, they were looking to try some new things with children. So I volunteered, and that turned into I guess kind of what it is now. So long story, I've always been Methodist. Always felt really called and really strongly about this particular denomination, and then this church specifically. I'm sure you've heard it from everybody who you've interviewed, but it's such a different place, and it's the best, the best community, I guess, of people that I've been with, as far as, who you want on this journey with you and who's going to support you. So the fact that I have that for my own self in this community, but then also then have been entrusted to help provide that to people's children has been an amazing experience. Some of the kids that were in like first grade when I really started working here this year are kind of bridging out of the children's ministry program and officially joining the youth program. And I'm just like, no, don't leave. I don't want, I'm not ready for y'all to kind of grow up. And I don't think they believe that they're old enough yet to leave. So this has kind of been my first summer of like big transition with all the kids who I started with are now moving onwards and upwards as children do. And we're getting new kids and things like that. So that was a really long answer to your question. I'm sorry. Oh. That went way off from what you had asked.
Tell me about how you first heard about Wells.
Yeah, so as a Millsap student, there were probably 6 or 7 of us in my freshman class who were all Methodist, who came to Jackson and had kind of, I don't know how we found each other. It must have just been through like Wesley Foundation. But we spent the first couple months of our freshman year, and every Sunday we would go to a different Methodist church, and we kind of made the circuit of Galloway, Christ, Wells, St. Luke's, kind of all these churches right here in the area. And we did probably like 4 or 5 laps to all the churches. And then people kind of just started finding their own place. So I came to Wells a couple of times in those first couple years, and kind of most of my friends were going to another Methodist church, so I started going with them. Then I came back my senior year because I missed. I don't know. It's weird because I'm very much a person who likes like traditional organ, reading liturgy. I don't like praise bands. Don't like screens in churches. So I knew I didn't want anything like that. But then you look at Wells, and it's certainly not a traditional church, but something just felt really right here. So I came back kind of after college, and came very, not very faithfully. Came when it was convenient. Came when I woke up on time. And then 2 or 3 years out of college, once I had started working, I just really needed to get back and was missing that element. And this was, I didn't think about going anywhere else. This is where I came. And it just so happened that a friend that I had recently met had come on staff here. So, there was someone else who was young and single, and, we had kind of, some similar interests, and we met other adults here who, I don't know. It's so cheesy to say that you find your people, but you find your people. But no, I took my sweet time kind of church shopping and coming and going and coming and going. But, there's pluses and minuses to kind of every congregation. But this one had, I don't know, it just felt right.
Well,
I don't know what.
Talk about what
yeah. Oh, I don't know.
You did you got the grand
I
tour.
did.
So
I did.
Maybe ID those things.
I think one of the things in the church that I grew up in, it was a larger congregation. It was all families and mom and dad and 2 kids and the dog, and which is wonderful, I guess, as a kid and you're going up in a church with a billion kids. But there's something that's just really unique here. And I hope people see it when they come, but there's people from every walk of life. There's people from all different kinds of family setups. There's people who are in recovery. There are people who, are millionaires. There's people who don't have anything. And I think that's pretty apparent when you come. And if you stick around for a little while, I think that's even more apparent, once you're here. But the other thing that really, caught my attention when I came was just the music was really diverse. They would do very traditional music, and the next week would be Bluegrass Sunday. And it's a very talented congregation, but all of that kind of came together. And the other thing that I really liked was that in a lot of churches, it's just really convenient. Even during worship service, the kids aren't in the worship service. They're doing something else, or they're at children's church, or they're at Sunday school, or they're all in nursery. And I know that meets a need for a lot of families, but there's something really cool about here. The kids are just a part of worship service, and if they make noise, they make noise, and if they whine, they whine, and if they need to get up and they walk through the front door to go to the bathroom, then that's it. So it's people are just very real here. You know, no one's trying to cover up the messiness or the craziness, and that's you just because, you know, people are prideful. You don't see that all the time. So it's nice to be at a place where you feel like everyone, you know, loves you on your great days. But if you come in and you're like, I've had the worst week of my life, or I fought with this person, or I'm stressing because finances are tight, people are going to be like, that sucks. I've been in the same position. You know, it gets better, or let me help you, or here's somebody you can talk to. It's very authentic here. And I don't know, I've been in a lot of churches and you just don't see that all the time to this degree. People are in real relationships. So, sorry, I keep coughing.
You're I would say fairly unique in the people that I've interviewed, in that you had a very traditional Methodist experience, and a contemporary one, not one from 30 years ago. You know, like older people that grew up and then they came back to church. So you kind of have a sense of what contemporary mainline Methodism looks like.
Right.
So compare and contrast your kind of typical mainline United Methodist and Wells, and where do they connect, and where does Wells kind of doing its own thing?
Well, and that's one of those things that's so kind of funny to try to put your finger on, because anyone that, like, on a Sunday bulletin, anyone that would just come and look at our Sunday bulletin would be like, this is a super traditional churches, because you don't see a whole lot. I mean, most churches will still do like a couple of hymns and an affirmation of faith, but very rarely do you see congregations anymore that you still flip to the back of the hymnal and you do a responsive psalm reading. You know, I remember doing that when I was really little, but our church came away from that. The more, I don't know, I feel like we try to pack way more into an hour than we used to, because it's the children's sermon and the announcements and this and that. And everyone just feels, at so many churches, you feel just really constrained by this hour. So we're going to cut some of these things to do one more praise and worship song, or so we can have a longer children's sermon, or what be it. So it's funny to me that if you look at our order of worship, if you look at our bulletin, we look super kind of super old school. Like, even so much that, I mean, I guess my now husband, back when we were just dating, the first time he came to Wells, he was raised very Baptist, just because we stand to read we stand for like a gospel reading, or you stand when you do the responsive psalms, or you stand when you do the affirmation of faith. After church, because I sing in the choir, so we weren't sitting together. So after church, and I was like, what'd you think? He was like, this place is like Catholic. You stand up so much. You stand, you sit, and you have to speak back, and, you know, you're supposed to know what to say. And I thought that was so funny, because we do have so many of those really traditional things that we do week to week. But then within that, you know, some weeks we spend 10 minutes just having people say who in their family is having a birthday, or what prayer requests are going on, or someone will get up and, you know, go into this long story about someone who was in an accident and needs this or needs that. So within our really traditional setup, there's so much fluidity still for the congregation to be an active part of worship. And, you know, sometimes it comes back to bite us in the butt if church goes 20 minutes late, or if a pastor feels like they have to like speed through the sermon or something like that. But we haven't lost that, I guess, connectiveness, to where people know that on a Sunday, you know, I get to, if I need this prayer request spoken aloud, I can do it. And that I've never in my life seen a church like that. Even thinking back, because I told you my mom was a pastor at that very large church that I grew up in. But then, I guess right after I graduated, she moved to another large congregation, not that large, but another large congregation on the North Shore, and then moved a couple years later to a small congregation that I think in a lot of ways is like Wells. I mean, I loved that church so much. But even in a congregation where I would say the dynamic was very similar to here and the people were very similar to here, you still didn't see quite as much participation from the pew Sunday to Sunday. I'm sorry, I keep coughing.
So is that is that Keith?
Yeah, I think it's a very, it's a very intentional way of worship that I guess just I've always assumed Keith has kind of always done it that way. Maybe it's only been since the 80s, who knows? But he'll say from time to time before he will take prayer requests, or before he'll ask for what birthdays and anniversaries are we celebrating that month. He'll acknowledge, people wonder all the time, why do we still do this when there's so much other stuff that we could be doing in this hour? Why are we spending time letting people yell out that your Aunt Bertha had, toenail surgery or something? But he's very adamant about the people of the body of this church need to be heard. They need to have that space. They need to know when because a lot of times in a church, the pastor will just be like, and for all of the prayer concerns on our heart, we're now going to pray. But he feels, I think, that there's a power in speaking, what's on our heart. And I mean, so I would say probably once a month or every 6 weeks, he'll say something along the lines of, I know not everybody understands why we still do it, but it's really important. Probably last year, the year before, we tried to go into, if a month had a fifth Sunday, we would do like a liturgical service to where we kind of cut out all of that. And it was really interesting because, and I mean, I loved it just as much as normal service, but how many people were like, we really missed that kind of 20-minute chunk in the middle of the service where kind of the congregation has, not the steering wheel, but, has kind of a say over how things happen. So all that go back to where do we fall in the continuum. I would say it's definitely, as far as worship, it's definitely not contemporary by like what most people would think of. We have tons of musicians and tons of instruments on, that they participate on any given Sunday, but we don't have a praise band. We don't have, every song we sing is out of the hymnal, or I would call it a Baptist song. It's a Baptist hymn that is not in the hymnal, but that everyone here just kind of knows anyway. Or if you don't know it, you'll catch on pretty quickly. So in the elements of worship, we're very traditional. We still do communion every Sunday, which a lot of Methodist churches are getting back to, but the norm is still, for most churches, that you only do it like on the first Sunday, or you do it on the last Sunday. So in the elements of worship, I would say we're really traditional. Sometimes in the execution, we might not, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say contemporary. I don't know, alternative maybe? What's a good word? I don't know. Fluid? I've never really thought about it. But it is, I mean, my mom, the couple of times she's been to church here, she's like, there's just something about this place. But it's because we do everything kind of, quote, by the books, but everything's just got like kind of a little Wells spin on it. And that sounds so like us versus them. Oh, you have to be an inside. I mean, and I don't intend for it to sound that way, but, yeah, everything just has this little bit of different on it sometimes. Mm-hmm. But, we are, we're definitely more traditional than anything else as far as worship goes. But again, the people are not traditional. So I think that's sometimes what people can't put a finger on what makes it unique or what they see that's different about it. But it's a pretty traditional space, but the people who occupy the space are not traditional by any means. Keith loves to say, like, we have the hippies sitting next to the bankers, and and half the women are like, oh no, we're still hippies. We're not he calls them has-been hippies. They're like, oh no, we're still hippies. So yeah, I don't know.
I think the thing that's been interesting, one of the things that's been interesting about doing these interviews is everybody comes from a different place in terms of getting here. And so for you being the, this very inculcated Methodist, kind of it's in your fibers,
Sure.
I'm sure,
Sure.
Methodism. But some of these people were New Age
Mm-hmm.
people. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
were, other Protestant faiths or
Right.
Catholic, and so I'm just curious how that is for you, being kind of coming up in this world and then having all these. I mean, I'm getting a sense of it, but maybe talk a little bit about that kind of experience.
I mean, the only time that I think that's ever like really evident, or that I ever think about it, is stuff like I serve as secretary for our administrative board, as well as our council on ministries, and sometimes people will say something or have a question about why we do something, and it's when I get to kind of raise my hand and lay down some Methodist knowledge, or, well, this is why this policy is in place, or if you look at the discipline, it says this. But I mean, as on a day-to-day basis, I think I said already, I sing in the choir, and a lot of our choir folks have kind of more Baptist backgrounds. So they'll make jokes all the time about, oh, here we're singing all this Baptist stuff again, or what happens more often than not is we'll sing a hymn that's in our hymnal, but I have never heard it in my life. And I'm always like, how is there still a Methodist song? I don't know. And they'll always be like, oh, that's because we stole that one from the Baptists. You just don't know it because you weren't Baptist. But I don't know, if anything, I think it makes for a richer experience because, and I've said it before, Keith will pull any holy, sacred experience and mash it together. This past Sunday, and I feel awful that I can't think of what it is. He had the congregation singing in 2 or 3 parts, some either Native American. Oh, it's all I can't remember what it was. It was Native American or island, but it was like this summoning chant. And he had the men singing one part, and they were just going doom 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 doom, and the women were singing the other part of this summoning circle song, and then Keith was singing the words of it. They weren't in English. Who knows what he was saying? He said it. What it essentially broke down to was to, like, me be here, us be here, God be here. And then it just ended in silence. And it was an amazing moment. And you could have heard a pin drop. And when he finally broke the silence, you could see everyone's face just like, oh, that was awesome. But certainly not Methodist, certainly not even Protestant. But it was something. It was a neat experience he had, and he remembered it, and and we did it in worship, and and it was a beautiful moment. But that's probably one of the things that makes the congregation so special, is that so few people are kind of cradle Methodists. So all of these different perspectives come together, and Keith will try anything once if he thinks it's going to go over well, or if they come back from mission trips, or when he comes back from his trips abroad, he'll share experiences. But so in that, I don't know, in that respect, it's really cool to not necessarily be in a place where everyone has just been inoculated with this stuff since birth, because I think we're maybe a little better at listening to one another, as far as, I love the high liturgical smells and bells kind of service, but very few people, like that. So the fact that we sometimes get to do it once every 4 months is perfect, because for people like me, I'm satisfied for a little while, and people who it's not necessarily their cup of tea, they sit through it once and they don't have to sit through it again for 4 or 5 months. So, so a lot of different preferences not get to be pleased, but, get to experience different things. And, we learn as we go. And the folks who plan worship are really good at kind of listening to people. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody really consciously thinks about a lot of times, well, her backgrounds brought this, but it all, it all comes together really neatly. So,
are you involved in any kind of kind of, I would say like the Methodist kind of conference type of stuff here in Mississippi?
I'm wrapping up for conference level committees. You serve for a quadrennium, so you serve for 4 years, and it is on the same calendar as the what's called general conferences, which is kind of the worldwide meeting of Methodist churches. And we just had one probably 2 months ago in Portland, Oregon. But for the past quadrennium, I've served on the conference board for higher education. So with the exception actually of Millsaps and Rusk colleges, which are the two Methodist colleges in Mississippi, it's the group that oversees the Wesley foundations at all of the other colleges and junior colleges, and, does the budgetary things and the hiring of the campus ministers and the Wesley Foundation directors. So that's been a very interesting board to sit on, especially coming from a school that, we had a Wesley Foundation, but we were a Methodist college anyway, so we didn't get like extra Methodist funding or anything like that. So I've been involved at the conference level just in that regard. I'm hoping to maybe move to another committee just because I like to see what's going on. I mean, in college, I served in a bunch of committees of Methodist college kids. But as far as, as an adult, the higher ed has been the only thing that I've done. But I like working with the conference level stuff.
What's the, within kind of the Mississippi conference, what's the rep or what do people say that you hear about Wells? I'm just in comparison to the other.
It's funny, this is just purely anecdotal, but my husband is from Wiggins, Mississippi. And the very first time I think I ever went to Wiggins, his mother introduced me to one of her friends who is Methodist. So we're talking, and she's like, where do you go to church in Jackson? And I said, Wells. And she goes, is that where that man Keith Dunkel is? And I was like, how on earth would you know that? And she was like, everybody knows about Wells.
And I thought,
yes, right. I'm not, and I hadn't even been thinking about the Methodist hour, but she was like, I just hear such good things about that congregation. But I think within the conference, I think we definitely have a good reputation within the conference. We're definitely an anomaly. If for nothing else, the fact that Keith has been here so long. And he's probably said this, but Methodists like to move the pastors around a lot just to, John Wesley was itinerant, and we're going to follow John Wesley, and we're going to be itinerant and move around. So the fact that he's been here for, 40 plus years definitely sets us apart because, it exempts us from some challenges as far as, we're not having to get to know a new pastor every 5 years. It brings different challenges. Keith, he'll be the first one, when we sit down as a staff, or when we sit down as an administrative board, or when we have our charge conference once a year to really plan church business. The first question out of his mouth is, am I still relevant? Do y'all still need me? What I do as your minister, is that still needed? So he always, he's the first person to question that. And of course, everyone's like, oh my God, don't ever leave us. But I have always, not that I've ever wanted anything to change, but I'm always just very appreciative that, and it's never a long conversation because the answer is always, yes, we still need you. Yes, you're still relevant. But I so appreciate his desire to open that conversation, because it would just be totally easy to say, I've stayed here 40 years. They're not going to move me. It's cakewalk. I'm done, and just sit back. Right. But he's so attuned, or wants to be so attuned to, what are our needs year to year. And not that, we don't do long-term planning, but he wants to know right now is what we're doing, is what I'm doing working. So, again, having someone who's been here for so long, and again, it hasn't been, I don't think, a challenge. But I think that's probably one of the biggest things that as far as people who are kind of in the know in the conference. If I think if you asked any other clergy, like, what's weird about Wells, the first thing out of their mouth would be, well, they've had their minister for so long. And, we've had other associate ministers come in and out, but I mean, Keith's been the pastor for, just an unusually long time in the Methodist Church. But it's kind of one of those things where, I don't know every minister, and I'm not, but you kind of look around and you're like, who else would take this place? Who else would be willing to work with the menagerie of people that we have, stay involved in some of the ministries that we're still involved with that a lot of churches have run away from, because it's not easy, and it's kind of hard work, and it can be challenging work and awkward work and uncomfortable work, but the church has stayed doing it. So I don't know, I think the 90th celebration and Keith's 80th birthday and things like that, I think he's set some good tones as far as like looking forward. How do we keep some of this stuff going? But back to your original question, I think from a conference standpoint, we're just kind of known as like the weird little church. Or I say little, we're considered a big church. Just because of I think if you worship over like 300 in a week consistently, you're considered a large congregation. So I say we're a little church, but we're considered a big church. But that we're just kind of that weird congregation that does its own thing. I don't know. I hope people don't see us as more or less than that. But I think it's a good sentiment around the state.
Well, let's talk about your ministry here.
Okay.
So how did you get started in the children's ministry?
I'm trying to even think. That's terrible to have to think about that. Prior to Wells, I was involved in a number of different children's ministry programs and interned at the church I'd grown up in they have I'm trying to think. They have like 20 something different children's Sunday school classes on a given week, because they have like, 5 fourth grade classes kind of thing. So it's a huge program. So I had lots of experience with how big churches operate. And then when I came here, they didn't really need any Sunday school teachers or things like that, but they were looking to revamp how the Wednesday night ministries were working. It had been just like a prayer meeting on Wednesday night, but they were looking to make it to where on Wednesdays they would have youth group, they would have classes for adults, they would still have prayer meeting, and then they would have dinner. But then the question became, well, what do you do with kids? So I had volunteered, just while we were trying out the Wednesday night stuff, to do Wednesday night fellowship ministry with the kids that were coming. So that's kind of how I started. And then that kind of turned into helping with Sunday school. And Joy Gates, who was the children's director at the time, from what she had said, I mean, she still teaches Sunday school, which is wonderful. I can't imagine her not being here. She had said that she had kind of been looking for a moment to go ahead and step down and turn that over. So it worked out well that kind of when I came, she was looking to not necessarily do the children's stuff on a week-to-week kind of directive basis. So not long after I started with the Wednesday night stuff, Todd, who was the administrative pastor at the time, Todd Watson, had said, would you be interested? It's a couple hours a week. You'd be over the Wednesday night stuff. You'd be over Sunday school. So, I said, absolutely. This is perfect because it lets me do, what I love to do. And then we've kind of, so when I took the position, there wasn't really like a job description or anything like that. But it's kind of grown and morphed over the past couple of years to include, still Wednesday night and Sundays, but also, our Day Stars program, or we do performances a couple times a year with the children, or we'll do Children's Day Out a couple of times a year. We take the kids all day and give the parents the day off, or trunk or treat, or Easter egg hunt, or, a number of different things that have fallen into that role. So it's been fun to kind of have the freedom to try new things and see what works and what doesn't work. And we have the parents of our kids are really great, because, they'll say, let's try this again, or they didn't really like that, or how could we morph it? So we have really good, honest feedback too that helps along the way. But yeah, I mean, it was all kind of, just timing, and I'm not one to, I don't use terms like, oh, it was a God thing very often, but it really kind of was right when I was looking to get back and to get really involved in a congregation again. They had the need for a children's person. So,
and the children's ministry is what ages?
Our earliest Sunday school class is like pre-K 4, and then it's our cutoff for children has kind of flexed over the years. It used to be, since in Jackson, 6th grade is middle school. It used to be the children's department ended after 5th grade. But then we had some parents kind of express that they wanted their kid to have kind of one more year to mature and, to not quite be a youth group member yet. So now our children's department is pre-K 4 through 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, they move into the youth department. So we get them for a nice long while. On Sunday mornings, it's broken down. Miss Erin Mason, she teaches pre-K 4 and kindergarten. Joy Gates teaches, Erin teaches preschool and pre-K. Joy Gates teaches kindergarten, 1st grade. Miss Martha Odom teaches 2nd and 3rd grade. Catherine Dollarhide teaches 4th and 5th grade, and that's the room that we're in now is the 4th and 5th grade room. And then Miss Morella Hennigan teaches 6th grade, and this year Diane Brayman taught 6th grade as well, because they did the Methodist confirmation curriculum with the 6th graders, which kind of gives them a year-long look into what does it mean to be a United Methodist. Is this, something that they want to be a part of? So they just don't blindly stick with this until, whatever. So that's kind of how we're broken down. And then on Wednesday nights, we have kids just anywhere in that age group, and it varies as far as sometimes we'll do missional work, sometimes we do art, sometimes we're working on learning a piece of music to sing in church, sometimes it's just games. I mean, right now in the summer, it's very loosey-goosey because, they just kind of want to run around and play, and, so we try to let them, but I don't know, it's very, I keep saying it's unique, and it sounds like such a cop-out, but, it's really neat to see these kids grow up and work together and become, I wrote about this in an article for the church newsletter a couple months ago, but one of the coolest things I think about this place is that the kids, I mean, they know that they're children, they know that they're not adults, but they don't really see themselves as kids when it comes to church stuff. Like this past year, Miss Morella, who's one of the 6th grade teachers, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then one of our other church members, Trina, who had been a Sunday school teacher and substitute teacher, was in a paralyzing car wreck. And, her life and her family's life totally changed. But in both of those situations, as soon as we got back on a Sunday, the kids were like, well, what do we need to do? How are we going to help? And you don't see a lot of 10-year-olds come together, or, however old they are. And, like when Morella was diagnosed with cancer, they wanted to know, is she going to lose her hair? And is she going to still be our teacher? And once you answered those 2 questions, they're like, all right, well, what does she need? Do we need to draw her pictures? Do we need to send her something? Do we need to paint her something? And in their own way, the fact that they feel empowered to do those kind of things. When I wrote about it, I just sat at my computer and cried the whole time. So I'm trying not to get like weepy now. But you don't see a place where kids feel, safe and empowered enough to be taking care of fully grown adults. It's a really, I don't know. It's really, and I mean, I can't take credit for it because I haven't been here all that long, but it's just the kind of people that are here. And I think it's, kind of like what I was saying earlier, the kids aren't pushed out of the church. They're not told, go wait in the nursery kind of thing. They are an active participating part of the church. So they feel like, they want to sign up to be lay ministers on Sunday. They want to be acolytes. They want to ring the chimes and light the candles. When on Wednesday nights and we're circling up to leave, they don't want me to be the one to lead the prayer. They want to lead the prayer kind of thing. So it's wonderful to see that. And I'm not sure that's something that somebody would see or I guess notice if you just poke in, quickly, because that's just how kind of it's always been. But as someone who has been in a number of children's ministries programs and has been in a number of churches, you don't see kids who are still going to run around and be kids, but then also really want to do the work of the church as well. They want to, if we're having a gardening Saturday, they want to come help garden. They want to hand out food on Tuesday mornings. They want to be involved in the church service, things like that. So it's, I don't know, it's really sad. It's really, I don't know, not hopeful, but it's encouraging to see that, I guess, in young people, and to hope that sticks with them.
Do you have kind of like a set curriculum that you work through, or do you develop things yourselves? Or
for Sunday school, we use the Methodist Publishing House curriculum. So right now it's called Deep Blue Kids, and it follows the lectionary. So whatever the pastors are preaching on, as long, assuming they're on the lectionary, which most of the time they're pretty good about, the same story will be what the kids are using. So, we use preschool curriculum, early elementary, middle elementary, older elementary, and then there's like a preteen. So, the past, I guess, 4 weeks have all been Noah's Ark. It's been different chunks of Noah's story, the warning, the building, the trusting, the deliverance kind of thing. So every class is working on the same content, but it's all, obviously tailored to that age group. So on a Sunday morning, we come down, they get to run around, they eat granola bars, and there's granola everywhere on the carpet. We pick up our little trash, and then Keith will normally come down and, sing with them for a couple of minutes and pray with them and just, talk with them. And sometimes, but again, like, I guess it's been 2 years now or a year ago, when he was kind of really in the thick of all his cancer treatments, he would bring his radiation mask and let the kids see, how they'd put the mask on him to hold him to the table so he didn't move. And they have a million questions and they want to know, all kind of stuff. So he'll come and have his time with them. And then we'll all, after he leaves, there's like a 3-minute video that goes with our curriculum that all the kids will sit and watch. And it's silly. I say silly. They're cartoon. It's just a cartoon telling of whatever the story is, and then they go to their individual classes. So we do use kind of a pre-prescribed curriculum on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm.
And do you add things to that, or do your own specialty things that you want to try or things as well? Or? Sometimes
the way, it's. I'm trying to think. On a Sunday, Sunday school hour. It's supposed to be from like 9:45 to 10:45. By the time we've done they've gotten to say hello and play, talking to Reverend Keith, watch the little video. They don't have a ton of time. But even for churches that have the full hour, the amount of kind of activities that you can choose from within each week's lesson is way more than an hour could fill. So pretty much on a Sunday they stick to that. The times that will kind of not go off course, but for holidays that, if we want to do kind of something special or a special craft or a special mission, something that we're doing special for something local, we'll kind of get off task. Like, I'm trying to think, like for around Valentine's Day, we have 2 men in the congregation who go a couple times a week to the Methodist Specialty Care Clinic in Flowood. So between like mid-January to to Valentine's Day, the kids are just making Valentine cards the whole time for the patients there. And like there's not a million people there. We don't have to make it, but they want to make 200 cards for 35 people, which is fine. That's great. So sometimes like that, if we have a special project coming up, they'll work on that either, in tandem with the Sunday school stuff or just in place of it. But sometimes, kids are kids, and sometimes they'll come in and, we don't have more than probably 6 people right now in any one class. But the teachers are really good about, they can read the kids where when the kids come in, there are some weeks where the teachers just know, like, they are not going to be sitting for this lesson a day. So let's use the parts of it that we can and make this work, because they don't want Sunday school to be a miserable experience for any, we don't want any kid going home and being like, oh, they just made me sit the whole hour and she just made me read from the Bible. So our teachers are great about being really quick on their toes to meet the needs of the kids, because, it is different from every Sunday to Sunday. You're not sure. The same kids are walking through the door, but the, kids are people too. They every week they need something different. So,
kind of based on your history of working in a more kind of traditional, bigger church, what are some things in terms of the children's ministry that are unique, either the kids that you work with, or what are things that are different that you've had to adjust to here as opposed to other places that you've done that, or does it feel the same, or what?
In most ways, it probably feels the same. The only thing that would maybe be a little more, not necessarily different, but maybe a little more exaggerated than you would see in other churches is that we have our group of kids that are here every week, but we also have a pretty high number of kids who either come with grandparents or who come with aunts and uncles or who come with neighbors, that we see regularly enough, to know them and recognize them, and, they know us, but but not here with any regularity. So, I mean, we joke as Sunday school teachers, because inevitably, if everyone's here, if all the teachers are here ready to go, we'll have like 6 kids show up. But if there's a week where like 2 or 3 teachers have to be out and the other 2 are like, it'll be fine, we have it, that's the week that 30 children show up. So I maybe just the numbers would be kind of just how much it fluctuates. I think would maybe be kind of one of the only big difference. But I mean, as far as I don't know. I feel like I have an especially fresh look because the church my mom now pastors is in Baton Rouge. She's at First United Methodist in Baton Rouge. It's the biggest Methodist church in Louisiana. But my dad teaches fourth grade Sunday school there. And just a couple weeks ago, I was there on a Sunday, and he made me go with him to help him teach Sunday school. And I was shocked at that even at a church with thousands and thousands of members and 400 kids in Sunday school on a Sunday, it was exactly the same. I was like, all right, we could have just like totally interchanged kids, and this would have been identical. So, I don't think it's all that different. Maybe some of the things we get to do with kids, like the fact that we get to do a kids' day out where we can take, 20 kids all around town and to the movies and to the trampoline park and things like that, and just have 4 or 5 volunteers, stuff like that. You can't do that with, or not that you can't, it's more difficult to do that with a huge children's program. So some of the kind of special individual things that we get to do, or like one of our kids, she was in her school's production of Schoolhouse Rock. So I took 2 or 3 of the, I guess 3 of the other kids in her Sunday school class and like picked them up on a Friday night. We went and ate Chick-fil-A together. Then we went and saw Anna in her play. And then, I brought them back home. So stuff like that, when you have a smaller group, you can do things like that. But by and large, I think it's very, kids are kids no matter where you go. So hopefully as long as the adults are doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's really not that different of a situation than anywhere else. So
what are the other, maybe you're not active in, but what are the other, there's so many ministries here. What are
Yeah.
the ones that you have an interest in, or that maybe you have a little bit of a foot in?
So, oh my goodness, there are so many, and so many of the of them are not ones that necessarily jump out at people's mind. But with our yearly Wells Fest music festival that happens, I'm the volunteer coordinator for that. So starting in the next couple of weeks, actually, the summer's almost gone. I'll start working with a lot of organizations around town, especially our high school and junior highs, where the kids like need service hours and things like that, to be getting them to sign up for different ways to help with the festival, or like Murrah's ROTC pretty much single-handedly runs staffs one kind of whole area of the festival, or we have a huge number of JSU volunteers every year. So I work to just coordinate all of that to make sure we don't have kind of dead zones during the festival, because even the workers need to be able to enjoy the festival and walk around and things like that. So that's the other ministry where I have kind of a definite kind of hand in. But the Tuesday morning ministries, which are now, when I first came here, that sounds like a kid coming up the stairs. When I first came here, I mean, it was just as active as it is now. The past year or so, they've worked really hard to kind of contain it, because what was happening was so many of the people they were servicing weren't from anywhere around here. And we were becoming less able to really serve the people in our neighborhood, because people would drive from Canton or, Pelahatchie or wherever they might be to come get a bag of food. So the past year or so, they've worked on having kind of a registry of so I think it's like a 3 zip code area. So I mean, it's not true. It's not just the neighborhood, but it's this, this kind of side of Jackson. So we've been able to kind of more fully serve these folks. So we had a meeting just yesterday. Oh no, that was this morning. Just kidding. And Reverend John was saying that the 2 women who kind of greet all of our food pantry participants when they come to the door, we're finally at a point where they know everybody by first name, because we're at the point where we're still serving 125 people a week, but they're people who are here kind of regularly, and John has helped a lot of them get photo IDs, because that's incredibly hard to do when you don't have transportation or the $30 or things like that. So that's kind of getting IDs has kind of been a shoot off of the Tuesday morning neighborhood ministries, which probably not a lot of people realize is happening. But I mean, that's what lets people get jobs. That's what, right, lets them vote. So that's been kind of a really important undertaking recently. It's been very interesting. Another part of that ministry is we have Dr. Yeager, who comes on Tuesdays and sees some of our neighborhood folks who can't get to a doctor. Allows them to get prescriptions filled. He'll bring the prescriptions, back here to the church. So they don't, just for transportation purposes. A lot of folks can't get to a pharmacy or things like that. But all of that happens kind of during the day where most people are at work. People don't really get to see that stuff happening. I'm trying to think there's so much of the stuff. I mean, you were here a couple of weeks ago when we were doing our Day Stars camp, which is our 2 weeks in the summer where we have about 30 kids that are here for our performing arts camp. So they spend 2 weeks doing singing, acting, movement, art, and then the other part of that is that I create a curriculum to go with it based on whatever show we're doing. So to where last year we did Jungle Books, it was all on God's creation and how do we love God's creation and all that kind of stuff. This year when we did Mulan, it's a story of a girl finding herself. So all of the curriculum was, who am I in God? What am I reflecting to the world? Am I reflecting God? Am I reflecting something else? So we kind of call that our little VBS with a twist because, it's important to us that there is still a biblical component to it, but it's different from other VBS programs. And number one, the hours, we keep them much longer than the other. Most VBSs are like 9 to noon. We keep them from about 8:30 till 3 or 3:30. But we call it our VBS with a twist because it is so focused. In addition to, the biblical curriculum, it's so focused on this end performance that they do at the end of the 2 weeks. So that's quickly growing to be, this was only our second year. So we're hoping that continues to be a ministry. And we're hoping that eventually it can be not just a summer ministry, but something that can be kind of an ongoing neighborhood program. So we're still kind of, testing the water there and fundraising and things like that. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I know financially we give to a lot of organizations within Jackson, just through benevolences and designated giving and things like that. I'm totally drawing a blank.
Well,
I know that. I know it's not like a pop quiz, right?
The ones that speak to you.
And
there are so many.
There are.
More just those ones that really.
Those are definitely.
If you had time, you wish you could be part
right,
of.
Right.
Kind of
well, and that's like it killed with Tuesday morning ministry. When we have, since I'm a school teacher, the other 36 weeks of the year, when we have vacation or things like that, I try to get up here because it's amazing to see. I was laughing the 2 weeks ago we were having Day Stars. And I was kind of walking between this main building and the Serendipity House across the street. One of the ladies was like, y'all really need to consider having day camp for grown-ups because how much fun would grown-up day camp be? And I was like, no, I'm not running that. I want to go to that. And she was like, no, really, y'all should work on that. And I was like, honey, you can come on and plan that all day long. I'll be the first person to sign up. So it's a really neat ministry to be a part of. And I know that the people that work with Tuesday morning ministry are so dedicated. They're here so early on Tuesday mornings. And I know more people in the congregation wish they could physically help support it. But it's so special. And again, unfortunately you just don't see a lot of churches physically doing things like handing out food anymore. We're in, just kind of an age where you see a lot of churches, writing a check to a food bank, which is fantastic as well. But it's neat to be able to physically look somebody in the eye and say, we're here about you. We care for you. And we'll still be here for you next week if you need us. Hopefully, we can help you get to a point where you don't need us. But until you get to that point, we're here for you.
Well, and just literally following.
Right, exactly.
Like,
That's what we were talking about today. We were like, it's wonderful to help people get, a GED or a job or an ID, but he actually but he actually said feed them. So all the other stuff's great and we can keep doing it, but he said to feed them. So we're going to keep feeding people,
So everybody, I've also been asking people kind of about, because of Keith's age and, he's not going to be here forever.
Sure.
I'm just curious of your thoughts about the future. And I guess there was some, with the anniversary, maybe some thinking about the future as well. Where do you see the church going and what do you hope for it?
I really hope that, when the time comes that, we don't have Keith to look to a weekly basis, that whoever is here, in the capacity of church leadership, is someone who's able to recognize that we're not a perfect church. We don't have it all figured out, and I think saying, I'm somebody that thinks, well, that's how we've always done it, is one of the most dangerous phrases that a church can employ, but can recognize the unique history and find a way to honor that and live into that, but still moving forward. Because I think there are a number of things that we could change and still, be true to who we are and who we've built ourselves as the past 90 years. But in the same token, I think there are probably really little changes that could take place that would go against that. Because I think as far as the congregation of the church, I would hope that it's not the situation that just because Keith wouldn't physically be here, that would change someone's opinion on whether or not this is a place worth attending. And I think Keith has been very good about always saying, I am not the church. The church is not me. The church is not you. The church is not the choir. The church is us all together, struggling through, trying to be who God wants us to be. So I feel like just in his rhetoric, he has set us up to hopefully live into that and not kind of hit this panic of, oh my God, he's not, we don't know what to do. I hope that we know ourselves well enough and we know our history well enough to be able to take that and to still, move forward into whatever new reality, will be headed our way, and do that with integrity and authenticity. But still mindful of, times change, needs change. So how do we meet that? But I really think these people, my people, are us, we'll be able to do that well. When, will it be easy? No. Will we probably kick and scream maybe for a minute? But I really hope going forward that we could do that kind of peaceably and happily, because as much as no one wants to see Keith go, the man has dealt with us and has dealt with this place for a really long time. So I hope that if the day ever comes when he decides not to be here on a week to week, that we can be a gracious enough people to say, you have done well. Take a break, let's see if but again, I think these people can do it. The thing that, especially as a children's ministry person, that's kind of always on my mind is how are we getting people in here who are who are not going to be dying in the next 20 years. there's, myself and my husband, and there's a couple of, and I say younger couples, meaning like, under 40, but definitely not enough of us to sustain the church for the next, 40, 50 years. So how do we encourage people that are, whether they're in this neighborhood, whether they're somewhere else in Jackson, whether they're somewhere else in the Tri-County area. We have people coming from Vicksburg. How do we convince people, even if you don't live in the neighborhood, I promise it's worth your drive to come here and be a part of this community. So that's kind of an ongoing conversation. I think especially in the past year, looking at, okay, we've been here 90 years. How do we make sure we're here for another 90 years? But I think that's where it's been great, because I've said it myself and I've heard other people say it. We're not going to get there just resting on our laurels and saying, oh, the past 90 years have been great. Look at all we've done for Jackson in 90 years. We need to remember that, but then we need to take that and run with it and say, how can we apply that to the next couple of decades? How can we make sure that sustains us and that we use that to find new ways to stay relevant and needed in giving to the community? So I think we can do it. I hope we can do it.
Well, I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to mention before we shut the recorder off?
Not that I can think of. I'll probably have a revelation at like 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, I have to email him. But no, I don't think. But no, not that I can think of.
Okay.
I think you kind of covered it all.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.